Welcome to Surviving the Dream with your hosts, Casey Arnold
and David Conway.
We're here to talk to people who seem to have their dream job and find out, what did it take? Is it what they imagined? Is it worth it? How do they do it?
Join us as we uncover the secrets of surviving the dream. Hi, Casey. How are you? Are you surviving the heat?
Surviving. I am. But you know what? My cat is afraid of the fan in my bedroom, which keeps my home cool. And I am really torn on if I want a cool home or a cat who's not afraid to come into my bedroom.
The cat wins, obviously. You're just going to have to get hot. That's how it is.
You know this because you also have a cat. And so there you go.
I currently have a cat with pneumonia in this hot weather. How bizarre is that? Anyway, enough of that. The cat will survive. I know the cat will survive. We've got a great guest today. We've had, obviously you and I we classify ourselves as writers on occasion. This guy is the real deal because he's a journalist, and I've always wanted to talk to a journalist because I think that's something that I would consider a very exciting job. He actually interviewed me a few weeks ago, so I'm kind of interested in turning the tables and seeing and seeing what it's like to interview him. It's Jeff Conway from Forbes. How are you, Jeff?
I'm good, David. Hello, Casey. Hello, David. Thanks for having me.
Hello. Thank you for being here. What does it mean to be a journalist these days? I feel like it's not what it used to be.
No, it means a lot of different things because back in the day, we were like newspapers and magazines, and now it's like digital and everybody's got a megaphone on social media for better or worse, you know?
Yeah.
So it's different. I feel I can't speak for media as a whole because there's a lot of media that I don't agree with and I do not personally like. But I stay in my own lane, and I mean that in the best way possible. I'm here about doing good work that matters with integrity, with thoughtfulness, that's different, that's original, that's refreshing, that's happy. The world's hard enough. I'm here to do happiness, but not fluff. Like there's always purpose. It's not fluff. That's the media I do. So I can never answer for media as a whole. I wish the best for everyone. I hope everybody leads with quality, but I just know that's unfortunately not the case. We live in a world of clickbait, and I would rather do a well-written, well-thought piece than get viral likes. Like, my integrity still matters, and I think for some journalists, especially in this day and age, that doesn't. And I don't mean that rudely. That's just fact.
This is fascinating. Yeah, because I was listening to a podcast, another podcast, and there was a guy on there called Joe Biden. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's retiring soon. But he was saying that in the modern world, he finds it difficult because, not that he found it difficult, but he was asked a question about journalists. And he said, well, the problem is with the internet is there's no editors. Is that something that you're roughly, that you were talking about here? I presumably you have an editor who says, hey, Jeff, you can't say this. You can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel I want to say your editor always has your best intentions at heart, but usually they have the intentions of the publication as a whole and maybe not your own creative lane. So I do have a little bit of a toughness with even in my work. I have a respect always, but I've also known that I have my own creative leash, that if I do this well and with morality, I'm going to go a little further on my leash until you say, Jeff, no. So that's kind of how I go. I ask for, and maybe it's wrong sometimes. I try to be always very cool about it, but I'm very big about asking for forgiveness, not permission. And I think that's actually the way you have to be. Otherwise, you're owned by someone, and no one wants to feel owned.
Right.
Very true.
Where did this all start, Jeff? When you how did you become a journalist in the first place? When did the dream happen?
Yeah. So, David Casey, I would say this literally started when I was a kid on road trips with my sister and my brother in the backseat of a Windstar minivan on road trips with my parents. I would be the person that loves movies so much that I would always quote the most random things, and I would annoy them for 3 hours at a time about these random quotes. And I'm saying it just like the character did. And I just loved movies, but I always knew I didn't want to be an actor because I know I can't memorize lines for the life of me. I don't want to. So I was like, but I want to do something with entertainment. So I started watching like these red carpet interviews when I was really young. And they always seemed so robotic to me and very like maneuverable and less human. I was like, they're not doing a good job. This doesn't feel like I'm speaking to a friend on the other side of the bar, which is, I think, the best kind of conversations you ever have. I was like, I feel like there's something in me socially that can do this in a way that's going to actually not only engage the interview subject, but when somebody watches or reads this, they're like, whoa, I actually feel like I know this person, not as Scarlett Johansson, the celebrity, but as the human business person, and just passionate human about life itself. So that's always been my take, if that answers your question.
Yeah, a lot more intimate. Were you like the kid that was like playing red carpet with your stuffed animals at home, like practicing your skills?
No, I wish I was that cute, Casey. That was not me. I would say I always just knew I wanted. I went to school for journalism. I just knew I wanted to do something. They actually tried to sucker me to do theater. My counselor, when I first got to Illinois State University, and I was like, no, I can't do lines. I don't want to act. So they switched me and put me in broadcast journalism where I wanted to be. So then I studied journalism. I worked for like news organizations on campus, but even my boss, who I'm friends with to this day, in college, she knew I wanted to do entertainment. I didn't want to do what we call hard news, which is like what we see on like the newscasts and whatnot. So I was always paving kind of my own path. I didn't really like to follow traditional rules and traditional ways. And that was my path. I started as a TV host. Well, not actually. I started as an intern right after graduating college. I worked 6 months full-time, zero pay for this entertainment show on NBC in Chicago. Worked crazy hard, never complained. 3 months into my stint there as an intern, I was the newest of 5 interns. They got to bring one intern to Italy with them for a filming. They brought me, and I was the newest one because I worked the hardest, I complained the least, I stayed the latest. I was there to earn my keep. And I think in our creative world, Casey and David, no matter what we're doing, whether we're actors, writers, journalists, we have to show our value first. And it's not fair because there's a lot of other industries where you can do a little sprinkle and now you have the good job. We have to work a little bit harder. I'm not trying to pounce on their hard work, but we have a different lane that's hard to even explain to, I'm sure, my parents, to my siblings, that is different. But we do it because we love it and we know it's different, and that's what we like about it.
That was a question that I often used to get was whenever I did a job, and even Cooper's Bar. I think my father said, "Did you get paid for it?" Because I think they're so used to me going, "Oh, I've got this great job. Oh, is it a job? Are you getting paid for it?" And they go, "Well, technically, no, but it's building for the future." And that seems to be a theme. I didn't realize that you had to go through that as a journalist as well. That you have
and
to.
It's not always that case. You know, some journalists they start right at the New York Times. It happens, but for a lot of us, especially when we're freelance. You have to be like, hey, I know there's like 85 of us million out here. What makes me different? I have to prove myself first. You know, I can say I'm really good, but allow my work hopefully to be the track record itself. And even then, you're still competing with a million other people, just in any profession, whether it's acting, writing, producing, directing. I think the entertainment world is a different beast, but we stick around because we love it. It annoys us half the time, but we love it half the other time.
Agreed. Is your family on board now? Are they more comfortable with your path and they understand it better?
It's funny. Yes and no. I think they always want me to still be in the job that I do, even on my hard days, because they love to like gloat to their friends about who I just interviewed. So I think they quietly love that part. They feel like by association, they're doing amazing things too, which is great. It's hard to explain. Nobody in my family, I don't know in your families, no one in my family does anything entertainment-like. So right. It's hard to explain to them. And no matter how I can get a whole bulletin board out, I still think they'd be like, huh? What is this? So I think they've learned just a mutual respect. They see my work, they like it, they enjoy it. They see that I am hopefully, as I believe, good at it. And they let me do it because they see the quality response it's getting. So I think that's where I am with my family.
I feel like my family could hang out with your family. They still sometimes are like, you could go back to school. You know, when I'm in between gigs, I'm like, I know what I want to do. I don't need to go back to school. No shade to anyone who decides to like change their path. But I'm like, I love being a writer. Just sometimes there's a lull.
And they mean well, I know, by saying that to you. But I hope that sometimes you can also say to them, I know you mean well, but this is my lane. I need you to respect it.
Exactly. So how come you didn't choose therapy? I feel like you would also have been like a good like coach or therapist. What is it that about interviewing and having a conversation in that scenario that speaks to you more than in a more personal setting?
I don't know. Again, I always loved movies and television. I would watch these celebrities, and I just always knew that there's got to be more to these people than we're seeing on these other shows, these other magazines. Like, we always get these like surface level questions, the things that seem like the old Liz Taylor propaganda way of making sure they look the way you want them to look. I want it to be more human. I want them to get emotional about questions. Like, one of my favorite questions I like to ask people too is, one, if they have a really layered character. Like, I just interviewed the cast of It Ends With Us, the new movie out this weekend. And I asked them, what would you say to your character Ryle, who is abusive in this film, if only you could, after embodying him, understanding who he is, what makes him tick, what he wants to be, what do you feel he needs to hear? And they love that question because they're like, wow, I've never thought about actually analyzing to that degree my own acting character. And then I also asked them on the flip side, like Matt Bomer recently for Fellow Travelers, who is an openly gay man in real life himself, just like he plays in the show Fellow Travelers. I asked him, what would you say to the Matt Bomer back in college at Carnegie Mellon that was still in the closet and wanted to be his true self, but lived in a time still where it wasn't fully socially acceptable? What would you say to that Matt, knowing everything you've achieved and experienced up to now? And my favorite moment as a journalist is seeing this thing in their eyes, being like, especially on these junket days. If you guys know junkets, it's like those long interview after interview after interview. You can see like they have like almost, I don't want to call it a sparkle because I don't want to toot my own horn, but there's like a sparkle in their eye where they go, well, this is a question, one, I want to actually answer, and two, I've never thought about, so I'm going to give you the most raw, beautiful response because I have no prep time for this. That's what I love.
Right.
So when you're doing a junket,
color happening.
When you're doing a junket, I mean, like, how long do they give you? I know they're notoriously short times.
It's rough. Sometimes I get 20 minutes if I'm really lucky. I interviewed Jake Gyllenhaal recently for Presumed Innocent, his Apple TV Plus limited series.
Yeah,
I got 4 minutes.
Show.
I got 4 minutes with another actor with him. So that was rough because not only did you want to interview Jake, but you had to be respectful to the person next to him. But still, I wanted to focus on Jake. So you have to be very clever of how you maneuver that, where it comes off respectful, but you're also milking your 4 minutes.
Can you explain why that was 4 minutes? Was that something that they said beforehand, or was that because we're running behind, you got 4 minutes?
No. So there's certain talent that certain streamers, distributors, whatnot, they only give journalists most of the time, especially like in bulk, a few minutes. Because they know they're also going to give you a few other people. Like I also talked to David E. Kelley, who also was the showrunner. So they knew you'd get other meat and potatoes in there. But like, again, it's tough to do a standalone Jake Gyllenhaal with 4 minutes while he's next to his co-star that you also have to ask a question to within these 4 minutes. But you also can find ways to milk it. Like sometimes I'll ask a question towards the end at like 3:32 with Kate Winslet when I had 4 minutes. And she kept going. And I had people, it was a Zoom interview. And I had people in the chat being like, Jeff, I need you to rap. I was thinking in my head, I'm not stopping her response. When she's done, she's done. I'm not going to ask her another question, but I'm going to wait until she gives her full answer. And I got 6 minutes because she kept going. I was like, I got a 6 minute Kate out of a 4 minute Kate. So
that's how you do it. That's how
you do it. I like it.
Yeah, I like it. Playing the game. But
yes.
What's a perfect interview for you?
I don't think there's like such thing as a perfect interview. I think a perfect interview, if there's a word perfect to interview, is when you have the time. Okay, so I'll give you one. It was Carol Burnett recently. I spoke with 91 years young Carol Burnett about Palm Royale, which is nominated for an Emmy right now for a performance on there. And they usually have like a PR person patch you through if it's a phone interview. And they actually emailed me. They're like, oh, Carol's just going to call you on Monday. And I was thinking in my head, do not give me Carol Burnett's number because if I go drinking on a Sunday, I'm going to call her up and be like, come out for mimosas, Carol Burnett. Don't give me her number. But the funny thing is, I'm sure she's got like a burner phone of sorts. When she called me, it said no caller ID. So I'm sure she's been around the block. She knows what she's doing. But it was still just her on the phone when she called me. And the first thing she says as soon as she calls and I pick up the phone, I go, hi, this is Jeff. She goes, hello, Jeff. This is Carol Burnett calling. And I was like, you have already made my whole day. Just this like sweet, no one's on the call with us. Usually there's PR people left and right, whether you're in a room with them, whether you're on a phone call or a Zoom. So it's been really nice just to have like a relaxed conversation. Nobody was being like, hey, Jeff, 2 more minutes. She's got to go. We just spoke for 30 minutes, had the most sweet conversation at the end. She just said, have a wonderful day, have a wonderful month, have a wonderful life. And I'm going to frame that behind my couch at some point just to have that moment that I got with the iconic comedy legend that is Carol Burnett. So for me, that's probably the closest to a perfect interview that I've had.
And when she rang, did you have your notebook ready, or were you going, "Oh my God, the phone's going"? I mean, I would be panicking. Oh, not now! I want to go to the restroom.
Fortunately, David, we have these things scheduled pretty early in advance, so I'm always ready like 10 minutes beforehand, just in case they call early. So no, I was ready for that. That wasn't like, "Hey, do you mind? I'm just brushing my teeth. Give me like 5 minutes, Carol." I wasn't going to do that for her.
Send to voicemail.
Did you have like a vision of how it would go when you started doing this? And it sounds like with the Carol Burnett that it's either meeting or exceeding any expectation you could have had, but let me not put words in your mouth.
No, Casey, no, that's a good question. There's always yes and no. I think in any creative industry, there's things that I feel have gone beyond my expectations in a lot of ways. And there's things that you still wish have come into fruition, which they haven't yet. I would say interview-wise, it's the biggest dream that I've been doing. I love every second of it, and I take nothing for granted. I was interviewed by my college recently for like a nice alumni spotlight, and they asked, "Well, who do you still want to interview?" And it was such a nice feeling after these 16 years, out of college and in the business. I had to literally be like, I am not sure because I've interviewed almost everyone I've ever dreamed of, which is a really nice feeling to have.
Wow.
But I would say I love what I'm doing. I love the interviews. There's always, maybe a few more bucks here and there would be nice. But, you have to decide, do you want this job that will give you more of that security? Do you want to be more of that grown-up Jeff? I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like, or do you want to love what you do and have to sacrifice on occasion? I've actually think I've chosen the latter. And of course, there's some pros and cons to that. But
you're among your people.
Yeah, but as creatives, and I know you both probably agree too, I love when I can wake up excited for the day. And not every day we're always excited, but there's certain days when you wake up knowing you have a certain project to do or a certain filming or whatnot. It's nice to have that. And I have friends, I'm sure you have friends that are not in entertainment. And I feel for them. They're like, "Jeff, I just can't wait for 5 o'clock every single day." That's all they live for. And I'm like, that's not a way to live, especially I'm 38. I'm like, we're only in our late 30s. If you're already that way, that is just terrifying. The word is terrifying. So there's pros and cons to every job. But if you love it, then you will make the sacrifices and you will stick around because it's what you feel like you're meant to do. Like, I don't know about you, Casey and David, with the writing work and everything you're doing. I can say, like, no matter what skills I have in this world, I know if there's one skill that I have zero doubt about and zero questioning about my skill level, it's interviewing. Like, I've had 16 years to, I don't want to use the word master it, but be very genius in the way I can adapt to people in about 5 seconds, pick up on social cues, pick up on their mannerisms, and know how to now maneuver by the way that they are. So I'm really proud of that.
That leads me to something. Have you ever had your mind blown in the middle of an interview where you've gone, "That is not what I was expecting"?
I'm trying to think. So yes, I can tell you one. And I'm probably not supposed to talk about this, but I'm going to talk to you guys about this.
Okay. No one will know, Jeff. It's not like we're recording this with the general
only your
public
podcast will. Your podcast listeners will. They'll have the inside scoop on this. So the show Succession. Great show. HBO was on for several seasons. Last season, I interviewed Brian Cox, who played the patriarch. Great actor.
Fuck off.
Oh, yeah. He's such a great actor, such a great man. And I'm interviewing him, and I'm asking him the question I told you earlier. It's like, what would you say to your character if only you could, Brian, after everything that he's gone through? And the whole show's about choosing one of his kids likely to be his successor with his big broadcasting conglomerate and whatnot. And he takes a moment to think, and he goes, he's like, "Don't trust your children." And he goes, "Because they're so," and he stops himself and he goes, I have a word, but I don't think I should say it, but it's because they're retarded. And I go in my head, I go, how about like dysfunctional? He's like, "Oh, dysfunctional." And so he's like, "Yes, take that one." And so we go past it. We're all good. And I can't stand the R word. I worked with special needs people back in high school. So like the R word, I don't think it should be used ever anymore like it used to. So, but the I don't want to use the word funniest thing. The most interesting thing happened as soon as I got off the call. It was a Zoom video interview with Brian. My phone lights up and it says on caller ID HBO, and they go, Jeff, please don't use that in the piece, please. And I go, guys, of course not. But again, that's the journalist that I choose to be. I do know there would be journalists out there that would be like, no, I got him saying the R word. I'm gonna milk this. He uses this negative word. But my thing is also, I want to work with HBO for a long time to come. And if you do choose that, you may get a big moment of fame, but you've also kind of stabbed your career. So you have to choose what you want to do. So I hope that was a story that was worth it for you, David.
No, that's good. No, I mean, I'm a big Brian Cox fan. I've listened to him in interviews, and you just go, wow, you're just saying that, aren't you? Well done, Brian.
No, he's the best, though. No, he's amazing. He's an amazing actor, and he was amazing to talk to.
Yeah.
I love how you come at it with positivity also, though, and not trying to go for like the salaciousness.
No, for sure. Yeah. And that's just me. It's me as a human. It's me as the journalist I want to be, because I don't think people want to work with me. You know, just like with you both. If you wrote, it's good to be controversial sometimes and do these certain edgy things, but you have to know where it's okay. And if you want to push it, you have to know that there could be consequences. And that's up to you. You got to choose as a creative, who is the creative I want to be. And for me, I want to be a trailblazing creative, but the right way, like not just because Brian Cox, said the R word. I can do better than that for my claim to fame. You know what I mean?
So if young Jeff could go back, sorry, Dave, if young Jeff could go back and advise you for your future, what kind of advice, if you could go back and advise young you for your future, would you have any advice for him?
Yeah, I think we all think of that question on occasion, you know, and I ask it a lot to my interviewees. For me, I've thought about this question myself, as I've asked other people too, is one, care less about what other people think. I've had hard times. I think all of us as creatives, we work with people that we're trying to appease. We're trying to make an impression. So it's hard to stop that validation want. And I still struggle with it, but I've come less. Well, I think in anything, when you've been in the business long enough and you know your work and know that you now have, whether you want to call it street cred or a portfolio that is really strong, you allow it to now speak for itself and hope that it does. And if it doesn't, don't stress about it. Because if you know it's good and you've worked hard and know that you don't see this anywhere else, that's good. So I think I would say to myself, don't care less, but then also focus on more the quality opportunities and less about the glamour of it all. That's what I would say to my earlier Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to go back to something you were saying about access. Because I was talking to a comedian once and he was on CNN and he managed to get somebody to say something live on TV, which would have been it turned into a massive gotcha moment, actually, for a politician, should we say, who was actually running for president at the time. And afterwards, I mean, he was sort of like thinking, great, got him. And CNN took him to one side and said, you've realized that we won't get access to him now. And that to me was kind of interesting because I saw it live. I did see it live and thought, oh, that's an interesting moment. We've all seen this recently, and we go, oh, well, someone said something. So what do you do? How important does access to the Star or to HBO, does that override sometimes getting these moments?
I think I can speak for myself as a journalist. I can't speak for everybody, but the publicist, the connections that I've made with, the streamers, Apple, Netflix, Hulu, whatnot, they matter, you know what I mean? And you easily can be blackballed if you ask a certain question or you turn somebody off, or if you were told beforehand not to ask this question and then yet you asked it, then you need to know that there's going to probably be repercussions. And more so, in the repercussions I mean is you can email someone now a week later being like, hey, I heard that you're going to have so-and-so now next. And they can be like, hard pass. I think I've even had a moment, and I know whether they would admit it or not, I have written a few reviews for films on occasion. It's not usually my forte or want. but Madam Web came out and I saw it, and it was, unfortunately, I found it really, really bad. Just everything, acting, storyline, everything. It was just really bad. And I think most of the world agreed there. So I decided to write a piece about it. I was still fair. I just said like it was, really poorly executed by acting, by story. And there was another Sony piece coming up later for another project. And I asked my contact, they gave it to another writer at Forbes. And I asked him, hey, we were already talking that I kind of called shotgun on this. And they go, oh, yeah. And they said in so many words, because they saw my Madam Web piece, they wanted to give it to somebody else because it looked bad for the studio, which doesn't seem fair. I see your face, David.
Right.
But I'm like, you know what? They're allowed to do that. I get it. But I'm also not going to change. And even so, I will still write negative reviews when I feel they're fair to write. And I always, even when I write them negatively, I give fair points of why. I still focus on any kind of positives too. So I'm not one to tear anybody to shreds. But I think it's fair to tell your viewers, not, whether you should see it or not. I'm just going to tell you, this is what I saw from it. Now you make your decision to go to the movies or not. I never say, don't go. That's not me.
Right.
And that's the kind of critic or journalist I want to be. There are people that do that. Mm-hmm. But I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you about what I liked and didn't like, and then you make your interpretation. I think news in general should be that way more. With the political system, we have so many different media outlets right now that tell you, they tell you the same story, but they route it with a narrative that fits their objective and their want or their candidate. And it's confusing. Like I will literally go between CNN and Fox News just out of curiosity, and it is jarring today.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's an SNL skit in the most sad, non-funny way.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing to do at the moment is to go between Fox, CNN, and MSNBC and see, and I throw the BBC in there as well. And I think I was telling Casey last week that I've seen the same person interviewed and go, wow, you really can shape a narrative on an interview. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and so a lot of people do that. I'm very big about any kind of my journalism. I'm here to tell you the facts, then you decide what to do with it. I'm not here to tell you which way to go with it. I'm going to give you what I know, but I'm never going to say, go this way, go that way. I feel that's what media has done poorly and rudely and wrongly, in my opinion.
And how do you feel that out? I mean, I suppose another way is by saying, do you do a lot of research beforehand or is it instinct?
I do a ton. Like I joke with people. I do research on my interview subjects up to the point of their blood type. That's how hardcore I try to do with my.
No wonder you had to earn their trust.
Yeah.
They know I wasn't just thrown by a news director being like, last minute, go talk to them. I show a genuine appreciation because I do. I love their artistry. So I'll speak to that. Sometimes, like I interviewed Kate Winslet recently. I said, I just love your work. I speak on behalf of many. You are one of the best actors in the game. And she's like, I just want to hug you right now as a virtual interview. And like those moments are cute because yes, it's a playful moment, but it's also just like I'm speaking as a fan, but without the giddy autograph book. I know how to do that line between journalist and fan where it doesn't come off like, whoa, he's a little creepy. I know how to do it the appropriate way, I think. I have to let the viewer judge for themselves. I think I'm doing it okay.
What is the line?
I mean, you have to decide. There is no definition to the line. I make my own line of where I think that is, and I think it's done well for me, so I'm just going to keep doing the line that I see for myself.
Right. Yeah. It's just. Can we start with a selfie? By the way, O negative.
Exactly. But sometimes you're right. But bringing up the selfies, like red carpet, sometimes I will still ask for a selfie. And I've had industry professionals and peers say to me, Jeff, don't do the selfie. And I actually disagree with that. We live in a day and age with social media where it helps promote maybe the interview that you did. So it's now I can actually put that photo later being like, hey, check out my interview with them. It's one thing to be the writer, interviewer of the interview. It's another thing to be the face next to them that had a great time without showing over bias that now I'm buddies with them, because that's not what I want to show either. You know what I mean? Because then it shows maybe some favoritism. So again, that line is a little blurred, and I try to straddle it the best I can.
So if you only have such a limited time to talk to these people, and in that, right, you want to gain their trust and make them feel comfortable and be able to ask them deeper questions, but not have a bias. Like, how do you juggle all of that?
So if there's ever a question that I want to ask that's a little bit more personal, I've learned through time, do it later on in the interview if you have a little bit of time, because warm them up I don't want to say the words butter them up, but, like get them comfortable, get them enjoying your question, make them being like, oh, that's a good question. And then towards the end, if you feel you have to, then find a way to like ask it towards the end. Like I interviewed Britney Spears was married to this guy named Sam Asghari for several years recently. And I was interviewing him about like his fitness and such. And his PR person was like, Jeff, no Britney questions. Like if you bring up her name once, we're hanging up the phone. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do it. But I knew how to actually ask a question at the end. I said, so, what brings you the most joy in your life today, Sam? Like when you get out of bed, what do you enjoy most? And he's like, I enjoy, my relationships in my life. I want to be a young dad. And he was in a relationship with Britney at the time. So he never said Britney, but put 2 + 2 together. That fortunately equals 4. And it was shared by like Vanity Fair, People Magazine, that I spoke with him, that he says he wants to be a young dad with Britney. So I know ways to get the question out with still respecting the rules of law, so to speak.
You use these powers in your personal life, or I feel like you would be the guy you go on a first date and you're like, oh my God, all my secrets are coming out, whether I want to or not. He's going to find it all.
No, unfortunately, I feel like I can ace it in journalism. I've done awful in the dating with it all. I don't know why I can't do it and translate in real life, but like I do by accident. I'm an interviewer during a date, and I feel like by the end I actually have to ask me, I'm like, I'm sorry, have I asked you too many questions? But my curiosity comes just out of human experiences. I don't care if you're a celebrity or a town council person. I want to know your story. And I think that's where I have always just loved. I'm a genuine, passionate storyteller, as you are too. You both are. That's why you do writing. You're storytellers. You want to create a world and tell a world that has purpose and meaning. So, I'm not sorry. If that keeps me single a little bit longer, so be it.
Exactly. It's why we do this too. Why we like to talk to people. How does it feel being on the other side?
It feels good. I enjoy it. I don't do podcasts enough. For me, it's very therapeutic to do it on the other side, because usually I have to be so on. Mm-hmm. It's nice to be able to sit back and actually just be receptive to your questions. So for me, this is like the therapy I don't do myself. So
this is good. And do you ever pinch yourself and say, I'm living the dream? This is what I want to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think it always goes back to like a Carol Burnett, or I interviewed Dick Van Dyke recently, or one of my favorites was in last year, back in September, I interviewed Julie Andrews. Oh, who, my goodness. I interviewed her, and it was her 88th birthday the next month. So it was virtual with her and her daughter, who write children's books now. But it was her 88th birthday in the following month. And I surprised her on Zoom with the 88 candle cupcake. And she went nuts for it. She's like, Jeff, this means everything to me. And she said at the end, she's like, Jeff, I hope we meet again. I'm like, Mary Poppins wants to meet me again. What's happening? So it was just, for me, like those are the moments when I get to speak to people that I literally thought I would never be able to do. And I book them all myself. Every single interview. I'm grateful for the Forbes name, but every single interview I book by myself. No one helps me. I mean, zero, no one. It's my tenacity. It's my being, hey, I'm Jeff. Here's who I just interviewed. I just interviewed exclusive with Jennifer Aniston. I just interviewed Kevin Costner. They shared it themselves. I'm the only person they wanted to speak with. I know how to write an email narrative too that shows, and it's all genuine. But it's like, this is why, with total respect, you should speak with me if you're going to choose one person over anybody. So that's of how I've led.
Can you talk about that process of setting up an interview, say, with Jennifer Aniston? How do you go about that?
It can be random. So she has a company called Lola V. It's a hair care company she's had for a few years now. So I remember when I knew about that, I heard she had this new company, Lola V, coming out. I literally just went as like a mere mortal that I am. I went to the Lola V website, went to the contact page where it was customer service, just being like, hey, I'm Jeff. I don't have a question about your conditioner or shampoo, but I'm a journalist. And if there's somebody on your publicity team that I can speak with, or you can direct my email towards, I really appreciate it. After 85 emails, I'm speaking with Jennifer Aniston. So it's just all about like moving the train until you get to what you wanted. That's always been my thing.
And how long would that process take?
I mean, it varies on who it is sometimes. Like, luckily with Carol Burnett, I know the publicity context because there's an Apple TV press page, so I can reach out. And they said no the first time because she was too busy. 2 weeks later, I followed up being like, hey, is Carol any more available now? I'm like, oh, yeah, she is. So, like, it's all about your own tenacity and staying on the radar and not letting one no stop you. I don't know. That's just, yeah.
That's a good, so you had to start, so you really were starting from like nothing when you started, right? And then I imagine the more people who say yes, the more celebrities are like, oh, well, he's already spoken to these people and they, enjoyed it. So now, is it any easier now or?
It is, but there's still times where, even today I was supposed to speak with Channing and them, and 10 minutes before the call, and with total respect to everybody that was trying to get this together and confirmed it with me, I had a confirmation email. I literally was dressed, about to hit the Zoom button, and I missed an email 10 minutes earlier than I was supposed to be on, being like, so sorry, Jeff, we're going to have to reschedule. Hopefully we can still make this work. And I'm like, I've had all my questions ready. I took like an hour or two to put these together. And I said it very respectfully. I was like, unfortunately, I'm very disappointed. I hope you guys can, I actually worked the words, make right and have this interview still have as planned. Like it's character and it's accountability on both sides. And I understand things happen, but again, it's a respect for my time when you can, and it's a respect for your time.
Are there a lot of times that you find you do a lot of prep work and the balance of like, 3 hours of prep work for a 30-second interview? Like, is there an imbalance, or how does that math work out?
I think sometimes it matters the time you have with them. Of course, if it's Jake Gyllenhaal, I know I just need to have 2 meaty questions, then that's all I've been able to do for 4 minutes. But when it's like a Julie Andrews, I really take my time. Unfortunately, I interviewed her during the SAG-AFTRA strike. It was still happening at the time. So I couldn't speak specifically to a certain film at the time, which was really rough. But there were ways I could maneuver around it, just being like, so Julie, how has your career and your mindset towards the business evolved? And she was able to answer those things. So I had to be more careful of how I spoke to things and how she spoke to things and still have an engaging interview, which I feel we definitely did. Of course, I wanted to say, can we talk about Sound of Music? Can we talk about Mary Poppins? Can we talk about Princess Diaries? We couldn't, but we could talk as more of an overall as a whole, which sometimes makes even more of an engaging conversation because we're now not nitpicking one movie that everybody wants to ask her about. She's talking about her career and her mindset as a whole. So, there's pros and cons to everything.
It sounds like your job most of the time is saying, Jeff, I want you to talk about grass, but you can't use the words green. It seems to be like that.
It's a game to find a way to still make them say grass. Yeah. It is. It's like a game of Pictionary. It's really rough.
Yeah. Wow. And have you had like big disappointments as well? You don't have to name names, but have you had moments where you've gone, oh, I didn't want to go there, that they've come out with something, or even the most famous interviewers, you've seen them go, oh, that went a bit south, and I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, I'm always very respectful of everybody, especially too when I interview, especially lately, because it has been difficult for me. I think it's just difficult for a lot of people, unfortunately, in the moment, to interview non-binary individuals, because I want to respect the they, them. But by accident, when I'm just off the cuff, I may say her or him, because that's maybe how I knew them while they were still identifying as a she, her. Mm-hmm. So I'm always very careful that way. But there was one, it's a younger actor, gender non-based, that I interviewed. And at the end, I asked her, she is transgender, but she started the business as a male actor, as a young male actor in the teenage years. So I asked the questions like, if you could speak to so-and-so male name, after everything that you've gone through up to now, what would you say to that person, knowing and getting to be who you are and you really are today? And unfortunately, she took that question really poorly. It was like, well, Jeff, I've always been this girl, and in so many words. She never said the word shame on you, but she's like, it's always been me, which I respect. But again, I don't think I was in the wrong by asking. Facts are facts of how it was. Mm-hmm. But I get that, and now I've learned that don't ask even that kind of question, because you want to be respectful. So I felt bad. Even the PR people were after. I sent a PR email being like, please apologize for me. Of course, I didn't mean it out of any ill intention, but you could tell that she was upset after that, and that's not what my intention was. Right. But these things can happen, by accident, and you hope you can get the be forgiven and be understanding. But sometimes certain people are just, they can't, and you can only do so much,
Right.
For what it's worth, it sounds to me like that's more a question of age, that if you haven't had enough time to have the perspective, you might still be too inside of it.
For sure.
To be like, what do you mean? I don't even know, and then as you get older, you're like you said, we all reach that point where we're like, oh man, if I could go back and talk to my younger self at this age, I would have given me some different guidance.
Yes. This actress, she was 20. So, you know what I mean? Maybe that's why, life wasn't there yet to actually evaluate also yet fully. So, but
I just really need to defend you.
I appreciate that, Casey. Thanks for doing it. And I meant well. And so, but you always, even as a journalist, I felt bad for like days upon after that.
Sure.
But you also have to learn to step away because my intentions were good. They were thoughtful and respectful. And unfortunately, they were taken wrong. And I can't do anything about someone's reaction, unfortunately.
And have you ever had an actor do what I did when I was in my 20s, when I was interviewed once for the Daily Mail, and I rang up the journalist the next day and said, I'm sorry, I was so off the cuff. I was so relaxed that I suddenly thought, I don't know what I said.
Oh, but I think you did it. You were too off the cuff, you're saying.
I was too off the cuff. Well, what it was is because I think I was just like, I was one of those young actors to look out for. And,
sure.
And I was probably very, very honest about,
But see, I love that. I think off the cuff is what I wanted. Yeah. You know what I mean? I would be like, thank you for being so real. Because a lot of times I'll watch even interviews I've done with these big stars and I know they're being vetted before this movie interview. And they say the exact same quote to the other journalists. So I'm like, are you really feeling that way? Or is this something that you rehearsed to make sure it sounded the way that looks good for the marketing of Universal? You know what I mean? Like, so, it's tough, It's tough. So I prefer off the cuff. I liked what you did.
Yeah. Well, but I think 25-year-old me was a little bit too off the cuff, probably. Well, I don't know if I was, but I remember thinking about it overnight and going, I shouldn't have said all that.
Do you ever let anybody take it back or be like, no, I need a do-over? Or it is what it is in the moment?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, even with Brian Cox, I changed the quote in the Forbes article to dysfunctional, not the R word. I allowed that, you know what I mean? Because it was my word, but he pointed and he said, yes, dysfunctional. So it still was his word ultimately in the end.
Right.
It wasn't like I had to add it in there just to be kind, and careful. But no, luckily I'm not live. None of my interviews are live. So they're allowed to be like, no, that's not how I want to say it. And I usually do before an interview, especially if it's just seated and not filmed. I'll say to people, my first thing I say is, if you don't like your answer, feel free to stop and start over. I let people do that because I want it to be, yes, you want it to be framed the way you want. I want it to still be genuine, off the cuff-ish. But if it's not, the right way that you're trying to say it, sometimes we need a moment to collect our thoughts. I get it. So that's kind of how I go with it, Casey.
Well, I can't believe it, but we have actually coming towards the end of this interview. So we're going to have to go to the questions that we ask everybody. There's no wrong answers here. Casey, do you want to ask the first question?
Well, I'm curious to know if you could do any other profession. Is there anything else that you would do?
Oh, God. I don't know. I always thought I would be maybe like a teacher because I did do a little bit of video broadcasting teaching in Chicago while I was a TV host just for I had a little bit of extra time and I just enjoyed it and a little extra income. I don't think I could do it full time. My patience isn't there that much. But it was fun to do, and it was nice to give your skills that you've learned and give pointers to the next generation of creators and creatives. So that was really helpful because sometimes in any of our businesses, it can be very self-absorbed about my journey and my creation. So to be able to give actually things and see them grow and succeed and get these jobs was almost more fulfilling sometimes than some of the interviews I've done. So it would be nice to be able to continue to do that balance when I have the time. But I would say that would be my one that I would do, maybe a teacher of sorts.
All right. And so what I want to know is, what would you do if you won the lottery?
Oh my gosh. Well, I would give a lot to charity because it matters how much money the lottery is.
It's a lot. It's a big one. It's huge.
Because nobody needs that kind of money. Nobody. So I'd give a lot away, but I would also, probably have a few houses around the world. I love Switzerland so much. I'd love to have a house in Switzerland, one in maybe Italy, one in Cabo San Lucas, those kind of things. I would just love to have places to be for mental health, to be able to go I need to get away, be here for a moment, go there for a moment.
Okay.
And probably not work as hard. I probably would work. I'd still be a journalist, but I think I would do it on my own time or become my own network and just pay for what Oprah did and just make my own for the fun of it.
Okay.
That's what I think I would do.
I've got the perfect house for you. It's in Annecy. I don't know if you know Annecy, but it's between the Swiss and Italian Alps and the French Alps. So if you mentioned Switzerland and Italy, so maybe Annecy.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up now.
Have a look at
Let's go house hunt together and figure it out.
Yeah.
Let's all go. Let's all do a little trip together, and you guys can show me the ropes.
Okay.
They do have a film festival there, an animation film festival there in the summer.
They do. They do. So,
Awesome.
you could interview some people there while you in between, like doing up your house.
Write it off while he's house hunting. I mean, that's part of the balance of living the dream, right? Hard-hitting question. What is your favorite snack?
I would say I don't know about my favorite snack, but like my favorite guilty pleasure treat is like a Mike and Ike's candy. I've always loved like a Mike and Ike's little candy box. Like if I go to the movies, if I can bring one piece of candy with me to watch the movie theater, it's just a Mike and Ike's. I've always just loved the taste. They're soft. They're still awful for your teeth, but I don't listen. So, I'll take.
All right. Final hard-hitting question from myself. What is your favorite animal and why?
So it's a cheetah, and it always has been. Because I'm a huge runner growing up, and I still try to run when I can, and I'm pretty fast. So I've always kind of identified with the cunningness of like a cheetah. I've always loved the beauty of a cheetah's look, and it's just cunning, fast nature, and its technique of running. I've always felt like if I was an animal, or if I could be reincarnated, that would be a good one. Plus, I'd be pretty high in the food chain, so less animals would be attacking me. I'd be more of the attacker. To live.
You really thought about this one. That was straight up. Usually people are like, I don't know.
I've had 38 years to think this over, David.
Yeah. And can I just ask, what's your distance running wise? What are you? What kind of 1,500 meters? Or
I don't know. I'm not good with meters. I go by.
We're in America, miles. Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I go by miles. I'm really off with meters.
Okay.
But like my best mile time would be around like a 5:30 miles.
Whoa, you're fast. You're very fast.
I don't do that more anymore. I would say this was like 10 years ago. I need to try it again. I'm probably around like a 6:18 at this point.
That's still good.
That's very
I will still
good.
take it, but I miss my 5:30 ways. But the body's not the same as my 20-something self. Even only at 30s, I know.
If a cheetah was actually running after you, I bet you could beat your...
No, adrenaline would come out of me real fast, Casey.
I did see one in the wild, a cheetah and her little cheetah cubs, and you have not seen anything cuter than a mama cheetah with her little cubs playing on her. Oh, my God.
But you also know how protective, if you look after one of those kids, you'd be gone in half a second.
Yeah, I was very far with like a really zooming in as far as I could zoom. And my family was like, "Are we done yet?" I'm like, "It's a cheetah and her cub. What do you mean? When are we ever going to see this again? Are we done yet?" It's not like you change the channel and you could flip back to it. Anyway, okay, sorry. My last question. If we really knew you, Jeff, what would we know?
If you really knew me. I always say to myself, I don't know, we all have like these inner thoughts, these inner talking that we do to ourselves. I've like evaluated myself, we always make time when we can to do that. And I've never said this out loud to anybody. It's just, I really don't have a conniving bone in my body. Like I'm not malicious towards anyone. Even if people have done me wrong, I just kind of let them go. They don't live in my world anymore. Like, I don't have anything vindictive in me. And I think that's a good feeling. I think if more of us had this, it'd be such a better world because I don't hold grudges. I just let you go on your way. I'm not here to be like nasty back. That gives more ammunition. Live a good life. Take the noise away. That's just how I am.
Or you could run away because you're so fast.
That's true.
I mean,
very true.
That's
David.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
that is really beautiful. You have been such a pleasure to talk to. Thank you so much for coming and doing this with us.
Thank you, David.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. The fastest man, the fastest journalist.
Whoa! I'm not Prefontaine. I'm not that fast.
With the proper motivation.
Yeah, but thank you for having me both.
Oh, thank you, Jen.
We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Quick shout out to Mike Nicholas for being our tech savior, and Carmen Sclafani, also known as Wiser Time. Thanks for our music. And thank you all for listening.